Item number 5 is unfinished business. Letter A, capital improvement project. First, that is the LLD Open House Report. We have Eric from Sheehan Nagel Hartray here to present the report.
I think I need to make Eric a presenter. Oh, let me get him.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the first time I've been a presenter, so bear with me as I figure out how to get my screen up.
Let me see, make presenter. You should get a notification that says.
The screen got, oh, here it is. All right. I don't know if you can see that yet.
You can.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. I was expecting it to change up top. All right. Well, first of all, we'd just like to say it was we felt it was a very good meeting. There's nothing scientific about the poll and everything there, but there was a lot of good positive energy in the room. And we thought it was very supportive and reassuring that we're all thinking about this project the right way. We did do some of these inspiration images that we asked people to put tape dots on to kind of signify their interest in particular elements, to take the temperature of the room that was there, the population that was there, and that's what these boards on my screen are showing you. You know, the youth space, I think there was pretty broad spread interest in everything shown there except for tutoring, but that comes up later. And tutoring in another area is actually very strongly supported. So we would be looking to the library kind of for their input on how much tutoring is really needed for the children's area. And it could be just a selection of people who were out there that day that had an impact on that. And if there's any comments anyone else wants to make as I go along, that please feel free to jump in. The adult space, again, there was pretty broad interest in a lot of the different services. The collaboration area was noticeably smaller, and I think there's, you know, I think it varies from community to community, and sometimes that depends on what other facilities are available in your community. So I think that one kind of stands out as the thing that really didn't draw as much attention. The teen space, I think, surprisingly got a lot of votes because there weren't teens in the room. So I think this is one of the spaces we really have to work with the library on to find out what the teen crowd is actually interested in. They're kind of underrepresented at the nighttime meeting. And it's something we could do a special meeting with just the teens if we wanted to kind of gather direct input. But the interest was pretty spread across. I think technology is clearly at the top, teen collection, but the creative space and collaboration, I'm not sure if those are reflective of the teens' interests or not. We weren't really planning on a big collaboration space necessarily.
Eric, could I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Do you mind explaining the whole process and how you got to these numbers?
Oh, sure. This was, you know, we put these boards together kind of to give some ideas of what could be put in the rooms, what types of features could be put in all the rooms. And every attendee who was interested in voting got a page of tape dots that they could put on the images they were interested in. And that was pretty much unlimited. They could put 50 dots on if they wanted. They could put 3 or 4. Pretty much everyone in the room took some tape dots and did apply them to these boards. And in addition to that, Tatiana and Mark and Don and myself were available in the room afterwards to talk to people who went around and looked at these boards while they were looking at them. So we got kind of some verbal feedback too, which we'll go over at the end of this conversation. So what we're looking at on these boards right here just represents the actual count of the tape dots that were on each image.
And part of the reason why it's important to look at this is it might guide what goes into these spaces. For instance, you can see technology, at least in this instance, on the team space page. There was a heavy weighting towards people in that particular open house putting stickers in the technology page. So that makes us look and ask a question of staff to say, okay, what types of technologies are used there? Maybe put a little bit more emphasis on researching that with the library as that space is being developed. So think of it, all these are inspiration boards to make sure the team is asking the right questions of the library, and we can reflect on that as the design is progressing.
And just we have a notification. We had about 25 to 30 people attend the open house in all at different times. Some stayed for the full amount of time. Some came in, watched the presentation, and then stayed for maybe a few minutes and then left. So it was kind of an in and out with people, but about 25 to 30 people.
Yeah, and it was a relatively short presentation, but it showed them the concept that was approved and where we were at that point in time. And we were really asking for their input on more of these kind of where their interest was on the program of the spaces. And bearing in mind, this isn't really scientific, and we do have to, when we look at these numbers, we talk to the staff then about, does this make sense with how the library is actually used? And what are you seeing on a daily basis to kind of make sure the numbers are reflecting kind of an accurate usage of the library? The study spaces, again, this was pretty broad support across. I think the one thing that jumped out to us is pretty typical in our experience is large study rooms. You kind of need to have one, but there's typically not a demand for a bunch of them. Most of the study room activities take place with 2 to 4 or a larger group of people, and that kind of 6 to 8 people room sometimes gets underutilized, or you'll have 1 or 2 people in there quite a bit at a time. So it's a room you need, but you don't need 2 or 3 of them, and that's pretty typical that we find. The other thing that's striking here is, again, we asked tutoring earlier, and we asked about tutoring space in a different way on this board, and it actually got quite a few votes on this board. And I believe the library has actually got a fair amount of tutoring activities that go on in the building too. So I think that's an area we need to kind of drill down a little bit with the library on and think best of how to satisfy that need. It may not be dedicated rooms. It may be kind of these spaces within the library where there's kind of a semi-quiet seating area where they can do those kind of activities.
And I agree with that determination, because we have, maybe it's not tutoring per se, and maybe the word collaboration space may have been, thought of in a different way, but I think tutoring space and working with another person, whether it's you're actually tutoring somebody or just working on a project together, I think that's what this is reflecting, that we need some of that kind of space in our building.
Yeah, it could vary from community to community depending on how the school situation is, if they have a strong program after school or not. But you're near a school, a middle, and so it is something that comes up. The outdoor space, there was a lot of enthusiasm for across the board. Kind of noticeably, it was kind of more towards events and variety of seating areas, and a little less towards quiet reading or book club discussion, which in some ways makes a certain amount of sense. The book club is a little more difficult to do, but there was strong support about it, and it actually came up a great deal in the discussions afterwards. I think some people voiced they were surprised to see the library was considering outdoor space. Other people were very enthusiastic about it, and frankly, it's a newer trend in libraries, and you guys are kind of at the forefront in that. And this is a list of things that Don and I kind of experienced when we were talking to people after the presentation, while they were putting the dots on. There was a great deal of enthusiasm across the board, but these areas kind of stood out. There was strong support for having a teen space. There was people, I can't say how many people almost everyone I talked to liked the idea of the north and south entrances off the with parking nearby. And it's just a reaction to that slope site. It's hard to find one entrance that meets enough requirements. So I think it's kind of confirming the decision that the board made to kind of go with that approach. There was also the parents there were really happy to hear the children's area was on the first floor and more accessible, had a little bit more room to move and to develop program area. The drive-up window seemed to surprise a few people, but those who asked about it were very enthusiastic that they could use it. Having accessible entrances at multiple areas and things, the ease of access was pointed out. And then, like I said earlier, the outdoor program space had a great deal of positive response. It seems to be something your community particularly enjoys. And I will say, being moving here from Michigan into this flatland area, you guys have a unique terrain for this area, and it seems to be greatly appreciated by the residents. Me too. It feels like home a little bit when I'm out there and there's hills and trees and so forth. The family restroom was brought up by several people. They were very supportive of that. And then the thing we weren't expecting, but there was a lot of reinforcement of, is people wanted to make sure you maintained a vibrant collection of materials, that they really enjoy the collection the library has, and they're hoping not to see it reduced or diminished in any way. So overall, I think we found that it really did support the key targeted areas that the library had selected and was interested in reinforcing and improving in these schemes. And so from that point of view, it was a very positive presentation. I'll let Tatiana and Mark talk a little bit. They were being asked the questions about financing and so forth.
Yeah, so Mark and I stationed the money board where we had all of the graphs and charts. And I did have a few patrons ask me a question about the levy and the funding. And every patron I spoke to, I would say most every patron I spoke to there, were very comfortable with the library aligning the levy with inflation moving forward in regards to the renovation. And they understood that after reducing the levy for a number of years, that increasing with the CPI or inflation makes total sense and allows us to operate normally. And my biggest takeaway from the conversations, and this was at the money board, was that patrons were most concerned about having a robust collection of materials, and Eric is very correct. Even there, they want to make sure we had the funding for materials, these materials being physical and digital. And then the other main topic of conversation at the money board was about square footage and for youth services and adult services. So discussing the fact that youth services would be increasing its footprint and that adult services would be dividing its square footage among the first floor and the second floor, and just letting them know that it would be equally distributed between departments. That gave everybody a bit of peace. And we also talked about maximizing the floor space with the shelving. So not decreasing the collection size, but adjusting the shelving to better meet the needs of the renovation. And then I received a lot of positive comments too about the north and south side entries. People were really interested in being able to enter directly into the youth services space, as were some patrons very interested in entering directly into the computer area in adult services. So it was a great open house. I'll turn it over to Mark, but then I want President Bartelli and Trustee Sullivan they were there too, representing the board, and they can also provide some comments about their interaction.
Yeah, and I don't have too much to add. I think Eric and Tatiana did a really good job summarizing everything. And I'm sure it'll be summarized a little bit more efficiently from the board member's point of view here in a moment. But one thing, in standing by the information board or the money board, I did get a couple of questions about, how is the schedule going to work with the library, and will we have access to the library and things like that. So when I did point out that the project is expected to be phased, where there would be some library services open to the public throughout the whole renovation, that really resolved any fears that someone might not have access to the library. So that was something that I noted at least 3 times, I think, came up and was alleviated fairly quickly. Other than that, there were some questions, I think, on just how, projects can, what they cost and what the breakdowns were. But you walk through and you point out the historical data, and it seems to make sense at that point. But I think everyone else summarized it well, so I'll turn it over. Representative Martelli.
Trustee Sullivan, would you like to add your comments?
You just want to go last. My comments were very similar to what's already been said. I will say that I expected people to have more questions. I think they were just interested and wanted to be informed. So I think the amount of material was just perfect. I think the presentation that the architects gave was the right amount of information. And people picked out the things that they were worried about. Like Tatiana said, I hope you're still going to have books, somebody said to me. So, you walk them back and you explain, yes, 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 yes. I hope you're going to have technology. Well, yes, 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 and this is how, and this is where. So everybody had a specific interest, and as soon as you explain to them, well, you're going to be satisfied, plus you're going to get all this other stuff, they were very happy. They can't wait, as a matter of fact. So that's what my experience was.
Thank you. Well, just to add, I agree with everything that's been said. I did get a question about whether the library would remain open during renovation, and that is a yes. That's what I informed them of.
Yep.
And then also they want to know if the number of PCs for public use would be less, same, or more.
Okay. We anticipate kind of an even distribution, so not a lot of reduction, maybe one or two less, a small amount less, because we'll be redistributing them across the building. But right now, we're not seeing high demand. Before COVID, we were adequately outfitted and maybe a little bit more than necessary. So we might see some reduction there, but not a huge amount.
And that's consistent with what we're seeing in libraries in general. It's the proliferation of personal devices that you can utilize and things is kind of diminishing the demand for fixed stations. But I think Trustee Sullivan, I'd like to reinforce her point though, that I think people come with a certain amount of tension of what's going to change at the library. Am I going to lose the things I like? And in the absence of knowledge and information, they tend to assume the worst. And I think most people felt very relieved to find out that not only was the library going to have what it had before, but there were going to be improvements to it that they were interested in. And for a public meeting, that was as positive as public meetings go for energy and so forth. That was very good meeting.
I think the library did a really good job in getting the word out that there was an open house, so it was well attended for these types of meetings. And I think it is a benefit to doing these, and that it can become part of the discussion as design progresses. So you not only get the staff input, the board input, but now the community input all melding together. So good timing, and kudos to the team for pulling it together.
Agreed. And I think, I know I saw some new faces. So that, I think, really shows that we really cast a wide net out there to inform the residents of this project.
I have a question. Do we have any idea when the second open house might be? I think, are we talking about a total of 3 possibly?
Yes.
Yeah.
The next one we're anticipating to be in July.
July.
Yes, and I would think it would be after the presentation to you of new material. We'd like, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we want to sit down with you at the next board meeting, give you the schematic design presentation with the updated floor plans that are progressed and some more design iterations, and then take that information after your feedback is given and kind of go through this almost the same process. It might be a little bit different because might not be as many inspiration boards, for instance. Putting stickers on it might be more of an update, but the same process in July after the board meeting.
Yeah, actually hang on to those inspiration boards because we might pull those out again for it to just illustrate kind of what the previous meeting was at.
They're actually posted in our meeting room right now, just in case
Yeah.
people are gonna.
But basically we want to get your design input, but then we'll reach out to the community and see what their feelings are about it too.
Is that it, Eric, or is there more to add? Any questions?
That's it. We're progressing otherwise. Tomorrow we are meeting with the city to talk about zoning and building codes. We don't anticipate any issues, but we'll certainly let you know if there are any. But I think it's pretty straightforward project in that respect. If we were adding on a bunch of square footage, it would be probably different. But this is pretty straightforward because it's primarily interior work.
That's a great transition progress update, if that makes sense to do now.
Just want, any other trustees have questions about the open?
I have a question, and this is probably the question that we don't want to ask because we don't want the answer. Is the price of lumber going to impact the project, and if so, by how much?
The price of lumber will have, it's going to impact every project, but it's factored into the cost estimates. When we do the cost estimate, we have an escalation factor on the end of it, and that's one of the markups that you may have remembered from the buildup. So that is factored in there to a point. I will say, for instance, today, if she just read that the lumber prices are coming down for the first time, they actually broke. Historically, they've been around $400 to $500 per the unit of material that they're sold on. They went up to over $1,400, and they're down below $1,000 now. So
they are dropping very fast.
Yes.
The speculators who bought up lumber to raise the price are losing money now, so they are selling their lumber fast.
Yep.
And developers that we work with all quit doing housing projects when the lumber prices went so high. We have them that want to start 5 projects this week. So they feel the numbers are going to be good in a couple months, back to where they're supposed to be.
So that being said, we will continue to watch the market. We hear different things from different subs, whether it be door hardware, and I know Eric heard that. I heard it from 2 different sources. There's different things like that we always will watch out for, but there is a safety factor in the estimates for that.
Great, thank you.
But Mark, you guys are estimating for the period of when the project is going to get built.
Correct.
So it is a projection, but it kind of, this blip is not the issue. It's kind of anticipating blips down the road is what we'll have to watch.
Mark, would you like to segue into the?
Yeah, that was well, the open house was part of the progress update. So the next bit, as Eric did mention, I believe, Shenango Archery did have design meetings with the staff. There were individual meetings with the different departments as well as administration. Those were really beneficial. I know I've heard from Amy and from Eric that there was a lot of good feedback there, and I believe Director Weinstein, same thing on your end. So that was we had a good month for that. The design team has also been on site multiple times, reviewing and documenting existing conditions. For instance, finding the big boulder in the north, was it the northwest corner of the site, things like that. They've been looking through, and they're continuing to come out. I know they were out the past 2 days. We'll be out again next Monday for meetings, so it's a lot of work going on right now.
And by design team, Mark is referring to all of our consultants too, the mechanical, plumbing engineers, the civil engineers, the landscape architects, those people.
And in addition to them, there are library consultants that are coming out. The environmental survey is being done. It's basically a check to make sure that we're not worried about asbestos or lead or any of those other types of issues. If we are, we want to notice now, not later on. Same thing with land surveying. Erickson Engineering is coming out, and they're doing the whole land survey as well as private utility location. So they're trying to find where everything is underground. And then the other thing, besides just design, we're also moving forward with putting together the pieces for the bond and disclosure council processes. Those are the entities that will look over the library's best interest when the bonds are eventually issued. So there will be board meeting discussions on that in the future. But right now, we're starting to do the legwork on that. And then obviously, as you all have heard, we did the community engagement meeting. In terms of schedule, we are still on schedule, which is great. We are at the June schematic design status update meeting. The next meeting is going to be in July. We anticipate coming to the board with a schematic design report, which would be design updates, an updated cost estimate based on the progress to date, as well as a check against the overall project schedule. We'll also probably start talking about project delivery methods. In other words, what type of builder and when that process needs to fall in line at the next board meeting. And I did put a little screenshot of the schedule zoomed in for upcoming activities. As you can see, we also are covering permitting, as Eric said, with our meeting with the village. And doing that now, we have a gap in between when we need to go in for building permit, just to make sure we have enough time, float is what we call it, to do anything that might need to be done ahead of submitting for building permit. So upcoming activities, we have the village staff review tomorrow. And then we have Sheehan Nickel Hartree finalizing the schematic design. And then we have the next thing for you to be aware of is the presentation to you at the July board meeting.
I see that Don just joined us.
Again,
Don,
I was going to ask if you want to be, I don't know if you're still looking at my screen. Do I need to do something to stop sharing my screen?
yeah. Or I can
Make another attendee the presenter?
As they're doing that, I'll just finish up the.
I put it back to Tatiana.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
You can keep going.
All right. So the last thing was and we'll do this every month as we go through, so you're always aware of where money sits, because at the end of the day, the project's going to be paid for, and we've got to be under budget, or on budget, I should say. So right now, you can see we have no change to the anticipated cost of the project, and the committed to date, those are signed contracts essentially. So that's Sheehan Nickel Hartree, all of their consultants that fall into those design categories. Those are the contracts that were approved last month. At CCS and other miscellaneous things like the environmental survey, land survey, and things like that. So all good news overall, and we're trending in the right direction. So I'll stand by for any questions as they sort through the presenter.
Yeah, I think you still have to, oh, what's that? Should I just say okay? Eric, I think you still need to make me present. In the meantime, I don't know if Don wants to add anything, because he was there and he provided the presentation at the beginning of the meeting. If you want to just go over what you went over at that presentation, I mean, not in full, but in summary.
Well, we tried to highlight some of the things that we've discussed in these meetings, things that we thought would be of particular interest to the public. And that included explaining the design strategies and why we've taken the design strategies that we've taken. And I think based on the feedback we had after the meeting, things like relocating the building entry to the center of the building, moving the youth services to the first floor off the lobby, adding a second entry on the south side of the building to take advantage of the parking that's there. We received a number of positive comments with respect to those design strategies, I would say. One of the other things that we tried to highlight was were some of the cost, and making sure that everybody understood that cost is an important factor in working through the design of this. And so highlighting things like making reuse of existing back of house spaces, prioritizing the expenditures on the public side of the building, the fact that we are working with the existing building and not expanding it at all, aside from adding a little vestibule on the south side of the building for the new entry. So we tried to emphasize that as well, so that the public had an awareness of that. These are things that we often talk about in these meetings, but I think when it was only a 15-minute presentation, And so I think when the presentation is that short and those are the things that you focus on, they tend to be the things that people remember, coming out of it. So, I didn't hear many comments from the public about the cost side of things, but I'm hoping that it served some useful purpose as far as the messaging that the library is trying to get out to the public. Those are the things that come to mind offhand. I thought it was very successful. We've done a number of these things through the years, and I thought this was very successful. And I thought that the format worked out very well, where it was a short presentation followed by a kind of town hall that allowed people to go around and ask questions, look at things. The sticker thing seemed to be that's one of those things, you're always a little bit worried. Do we end up with a bunch of blank boards, at the end of the night? And I think the people who were at the meeting really embraced that as an activity. And so I think that's, that's all, those are all signs of positive engagement with the community, which is really what you're hoping for in these things.
Thank you.
You done? Move on to,
Oh, okay, I think I'm up.
Good.
Subset number 3 is communications plan update. And what I have for that is dependent on the schematic plan designs and images as part of the communications overall. And we'd like to provide a special mailing after the board sees the new designs, and also include the financial information that was shown on the image board, a la the Villa Park flyer. And we'd also replicate those financial points on a flyer internally as well in the building, and also include any new schematic design. So maybe a 2-page flyer on both sides, one side being financial, the other side being new imagery, mailing it out special just to inform residents that this is our next stage. Dependent on our scheduling of the next open house, maybe advertising that as well to get people interested in coming to a second house. So that's number 1. We'll also take higher resolution photos of the image boards. I know that I put together a PDF that's available on the website, and I shared with the board members, but they're there's a collage of them and they're not super clear. So we'll take individual shots of each board and post them on the website. And then thirdly, also planning to do some videos that will show where the renovation changes will occur, as well as what we intend to accomplish with the renovation. So that's kind of adding another layer to our overall communications plan. Having flyers, imagery, having some video, and also sending out some mailings just to keep everybody in the loop. And I don't know if you have any more to add about the communication.
No, I think we'll work with staff to schedule, we'll find the right timing to schedule the next one. So we do have 3 that we're targeting right now. And we'll make sure that the formats keep the momentum going with getting the community aware of what your plans are.
Any questions?
all right, we'll move on to agenda item number 6, the committee reports. I just wanted to add that new committee arrangements will be announced at the July board meeting.
Thank you, Nagel. Unless there's any
Okay,
other.
thanks.
Yeah.